How's it going, everyone, and welcome to the All Stars Entertainment Podcast. I'm Brian,
I'm Colin.
and today we are talking about Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Definitely didn't have to read it.
Ugh. I'm gonna start off by saying this was a movie, and it exists.
Was it? Was it a movie?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what it's about.
Yeah, hit me with that great synopsis, I'm sure.
This film is about a charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers embarking on an epic quest to retrieve a long-lost relic. But their charming adventure goes dangerously awry when they run afoul of the wrong people. If that doesn't get you excited for this movie, I don't know what will.
That was it?
That was it.
I thought there was going to be more. Okay.
Nope, that was it.
Well, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, there was people, there was an adventure,
There was action.
there was action,
Question mark?
there was a relic,
There was a story?
there was a story.
There was.
Kind of. I mean, at least it had a point. I don't know.
It was kind of half-assed.
There's a lot of questions in this
Yeah.
podcast, obviously, in the beginning.
It should just be called Dungeons and Dragons? Question mark.
No, it should be Dungeons and Dragons? Anyway, we got that out of the way.
Absolutely.
Let's just jump right into the screenplay.
Yep.
Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly.
Alongside Michael Gilio, co-wrote this Honor Among Thieves, I guess is what we'll call it here. But, yeah, I tell you this though, Brian. I like the first... I'm going to go first half of this movie. I like the first half. It feels like a Dungeons and Dragons game to me. It puts me right in that fantasy world. But then they start going on the quest, and I gotta tell you, it feels like a very generic action movie.
The point of the movie was the worst.
Yeah.
So, man, boy, I tell you, the screenplay for me, it's probably some of the worst forced comedy I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Chris Pine's character, which we'll talk about his performance later, there were just... I get he's supposed to be the witty bard or whatever, but, like, oh my god. It was like every line needed to be a joke. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
I tell you, it doesn't translate well.
No, it doesn't. Like,
I understand what the screenwriters were going for, but maybe what they could have done is really just make this feel like a Dungeons and Dragons adventure throughout the entire course of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you could have written Chris Pine's character like his Star Trek character, who had a lot of comedy, but he had serious moments where he was good, and both of those performances, whether they were serious or funny, were good. This was just nonstop funny, with like maybe 3 or 4 scenes of serious that were just like, even then he had to throw in some stupid joke.
Right. Even the serious moment he has with the elf there, or the sorcerer, it just felt forced beyond belief.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I'm not saying it's Chris Pine. I'm saying it's the screenplay. I think it was written very... I don't want to say poorly. I'm going to say poorly. Poorly. And I don't know. It was just... There were some choices in terms of writing where I'm like, why did this line need to be here? Why does this need to be a joke? Why can't we have, like, a serious interaction between characters just once?
Right. And mind you, this is a film that runs over 2 hours.
And it felt like 5.
It did. It really did. Like, I honestly wanted to not watch the rest of this movie once it felt very generic and to the side. But maybe that's to get the mainstream audience, and I don't know, but, you know, as a guy who kind of likes the D&D atmosphere and the D&D vibe,
yeah,
it really lost me.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been funny to have, like... Listen, if you want to make this a funny, who cares movie, I would have liked a couple fourth wall breaks or something going, is that okay with the Dungeon Master? Throw that joke in there, because that would have been funny.
That'd be a good joke, man.
You know, break the fourth wall, have some fun, make it almost like a Deadpool Dungeons and Dragons, which I would pay to see, by the way.
Absolutely.
But, I don't know, I just felt like the screenplay just was so, like you said, generic.
Yeah.
It was,
I mean,
these characters talk.
Right.
And then they walk to this location, and then they recruit somebody. There's some stupid jokes, there's some good jokes. And then there's scenes that go on forever, like that graveyard scene.
Oh my, I literally said to you in the theater, I said, this scene has gone on far too long, it is no longer funny, I no longer care.
And then it carried on for another minute.
Right. But I'll tell you, the screenplay, it hits all the beats that you need for a Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah.
However, it does nothing original, does nothing interesting with them. And I think that's the biggest problem. This movie is just really not interesting.
No, and I feel like and this might be something that probably should have looked up before. I don't know if The Honor Among Thieves is like a pre-made D&D story or somebody made it. You know how they give certain stories and stuff. But like, there are probably better stories you could have chose to adapt. Like the Baldur's Gate stories, you know, I mean, they're games now. You could, with the way they're remaking video game movies or making video game movies, do that, honestly. But just, I don't know. I just don't think I don't know if they didn't choose the right story or they definitely didn't write the correct story.
Right. I will say this, though. I do like some of the cinematography that Barry Peterson put in this movie. I mean, we're talking about this guy did the cinematography for Zoolander, Hollywood Homicide, Starsky and Hutch, 21 Jump Street, the Lego Movie, Vacation, Game Night, so on and so forth.
Did he do 22 Jump Street?
He did.
My name is Jeff. So
Worth it.
Worth it.
Worth it for the meme.
But no, I think that was one of like of how bad this movie was. The cinematography was pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, you had some good shots in there for what it was. I mean, obviously a lot of CG.
Yeah.
But I liked it.
Even just the one sequence where they have the Bradley Cooper cameo with Michelle Rodriguez, and Michelle Rodriguez is like almost twice the size of Bradley Cooper.
He's so small.
It's such a well-crafted sequence. I can't underscore that enough how cool that was to behold.
I really like the scene where they escape prison on that Eagle Hawk character guy.
Yeah.
Like where they flew out the window, and that was a great shot.
Yeah.
I like that. There were a lot of good like when the villain there was summoning the power to turn everybody evil. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it was cool shots where like all this red mist was coming into like this arena and it was crazy. It looked awesome.
Oh, absolutely. I do think the one shot that could have been better was when it was kind of toward the climax of the film where they're in the game in the arena.
Yes.
And it just felt like
in the maze thing.
Yeah, in the maze. I couldn't remember what it was exactly, and it felt like I was just very claustrophobic. Like I was just cornered off, and I get that's the point.
I think that's the point of it.
That's the point of it, but I guess I kind of have to compare it to the Maze Runner a little bit, where it felt like I was still immersed in the environment and like wasn't a maze, but like wasn't. I was just trying to like figure my way out, which is what I thought the characters in this movie were doing. But it really just felt like they were just stuck.
Right.
And just couldn't move.
Yeah.
Which I said, I guess that's the point, but still, it didn't translate well enough for me.
With the traps and stuff, it made me think of, and I don't even know if you've even seen Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. But there's
haven't seen a single Harry Potter film, actually, as a matter of fact.
Have you read the books?
Nope.
Sorry to hear that. So anyway, there's a sequence at the end of the Goblet of Fire where they're in a maze, and obviously everybody's alone, but, you know, people are getting taken and drug into the ground by roots and sucked into like the walls, which are made of grass and stuff. I'm like, that was a great sequence, and I'm watching this film in the maze, and I'm like, this is not a great sequence. You know, I mean, there was a sequence in Assassin's Creed Odyssey where you were in, which was essentially the labyrinth maze. It's a puzzle that you have to solve. I got you. And even that was like, wow, this doesn't even do it as good as that.
See, Assassin's Creed didn't even cross my mind, but that would have made more sense to kind of try to do for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really well executed sequence where like you're like, okay, you're obviously they put you on a certain path and they can't make this huge maze, but you look out on it and you're like, oh man, I'm gonna take 7 hours to beat this quest.
Right.
So it was a cool concept, like with the walls shifting and then people who don't make it, they get like killed or whatever. I don't even know what it was, but yeah, I mean.
It could have even just been the close angles that they used throughout the maze for me. Like maybe a nice like longer shot or medium shot.
Could have used a top-down shot out to John Wick.
Big facts.
But I mean, yeah, I like like how it felt claustrophobic, but you needed a break from that. Like you could have used a top-down, you could have used a long shot down like a hallway. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
You know, watch them running out the hallway. Maybe do a sequence, and this is obviously a screenplay, where like the hallway keeps going. There was a movie, and I've drawn a blank on it, but like they were running and the hallway just kept going. Like they could never reach the end of it. And that would have been a cool sequence.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The cinematography was good. There were a few shots, like you said, in the maze. The final fight with the boss lady there,
Yeah.
kind of lackluster for me.
Right.
All that build up, like especially after the sequence I talked about where she's bringing in all the mist. It's like, okay, that wasn't very good.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
maybe we could credit that to some of the editor Dan Lementhal's work.
I concur with that.
Because this is a guy who has done the Mortal Kombat movie from 2021.
I actually like that movie, with the exception of that new character.
Right, but it was like
it was
fellow generic. It
was well, coming off of the original Mortal Kombat movies, it was better. But yeah,
Sure.
it was a generic Mortal Kombat film, but I liked it.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, what else did he work on?
Spider-Man Far From Home, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Spider-Man Homecoming, Ant-Man Thor the Dark World. So he's got a lot of Marvel Cinematic Universe underneath his belt.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's kind of like translated into the way he processed the editing process here.
He edited this into kind of like a grand epic kind of deal.
Right. Well, which I mean, it kind of is, but at the same time, are D&D quests really like epic in that kind of super heroic sense, or are they more just like, medieval stories that we live out?
Again, this falls into the D&D where they can be if you have the right story and you have somebody who is the dungeon master running it properly. Because I've read things of D&D games going on for like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like the dungeon master is constantly just like, and that again is part of like the players. That's what makes D&D so well, is not only does the dungeon master have to be on top of it, but the players do, and they can influence the dungeon master, who have to change things up on the fly. And that doesn't necessarily translate to a movie as well as it does, say, a video game, where you have games like, Baldur's Gate, you have Wrath of the Righteous, you have even games like Expeditions, those kind of like games where you a lot of random generating numbers, and you have stuff like that where a lot of it depends on background. Or even Baldur's Gate, literally, to do stuff, you literally have to roll a virtual dice.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think maybe it doesn't translate well, and again, the editing, I just was like, I don't know. It makes a lot of sense knowing that he worked on things like Marvel, because especially just like the long shots when they're on the boat. They're on a boat at one point, like going away from the arena, and it's like straight out of like Thor, or something. And I'm like, this sucks. Like it felt like, it felt like all the worst Marvel movies thrown into one movie.
Yeah. I'd like to piggyback off your comment about the translation here, and maybe that's the thing, because like I'm envisioning the future of this franchise, because I know it's going to be a franchise.
It has to be.
Maybe this film was like an experiment in the sense that we're gonna do like half of what D&D folklore is, and then half of like this generic action piece to bring in a mainstream audience.
Right.
And then I think from there, maybe they'll decide, maybe they'll do like TV shows really based around the folklore, and then like movies will be more mainstream and things like that. Because I know they've already greenlit a show over at Paramount Plus.
That might be interesting.
So I don't know. Maybe it's a whole thing of like trying to figure out how this property will translate.
Right. I mean, if they do the half thing like you suggested, and they choose the first half of this film, I think it has a bright future.
Yeah, I'm all in.
It started off great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said. I mean, there were obviously a few sequences, especially with Chris Pine's character, where it's just like, all right, you could have just said something and not had to be a jerk about it, but
right.
Whatever. But yeah, I don't know. The editing for me, which like obviously it sounds like for you, just was like, okay.
Yeah, it was very generic, and I hate to keep recapitulating myself here, but this film is very generic once you really get into the weeds of it.
It really is. I mean, and again, that goes back to the screenplay, and unfortunately, the great cinematography we talked about got negated by some poor editing choices. But one thing that wasn't hurt or impacted negatively was the music.
Absolutely. This is Lorne Balfe doing the score. In addition to this, he's done recently Black Adam. He's done Top Gun Maverick.
Best movie ever made.
He did Ambulance. He did The Forgiven. He did Black Widow. And then going back further into discography, he did Pacific Rim Uprising, the Lego Batman movie, 13 Hours. And then upcoming, he's going to do Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Parts 1 and 2.
I'm excited for those.
So, absolutely. He's also done, like, video game scores. Like, he did, like, the Skylanders. He did Assassin's Creed 3.
Nice. Oh, good. Yeah, I really like the soundtrack of Assassin's Creed 3, so that was good.
Big facts.
That was the one where he was in the Americas.
Yeah. So, Lorne Balfe really just knows his way around a nice action piece. And he really makes the film, or in video games as well, like very cinematic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like it really just kind of immerses you into the world, and he does these like very like subtle cues about how to just like, like kind of like twist the scene to a certain perspective or point of view, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Even in this film, he does it, which, granted, there's not that much, script or story to work with, but there's still even those moments where I just remember like, okay, I understand. Like the very end of the sequence the very end of the movie is what I meant to say, where they have like that like character shift, where they kind of resurrect that one character.
Oh yeah.
And there's like that little like subtle change in the score. Where you're just like, okay,
Gotcha.
that was cool.
Yeah.
Saw it coming a mile away, but that was still cool.
Absolutely. It's really, after Lord of the Rings, it's probably not super difficult to put a score or soundtrack together for this kind of movie.
Yeah, naturally.
But I think did a good job all around.
Yeah, absolutely.
It fit the atmosphere perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who knows exactly what he's doing based off all the titles I just read to you.
Oh, for sure.
So
absolutely.
And especially since he's worked on a video game like Assassin's Creed 3.
I was just about to say that. I think his background in video game, music and stuff like that helped him in this, as D&D is a very video game / board game mesh, background.
Right.
So.
I mean, like we've been saying, this was no easy task to pull off for a D&D movie.
Some would say they didn't pull it off, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So speaking of not pulling it off, let's talk about the director, who we touched on in the screenplay.
Right, because the directors of this film are Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley. And I don't know if they maybe just had like competing visions, perhaps, but it didn't translate. I don't know what they were going for in terms of screenplay. I really don't. Like I don't see the full arc completed. I really don't.
No.
So, yeah.
This was very reminiscent of the Batman film with Robert Pattinson, where you had all that build up and you had 3 storylines that didn't finish.
Right. And
it's like, I feel the same way about this one. It's like, did they finish? I guess, but they were just like, and done. Like there was no, and this happened and this happened. Okay, cool. There's your closure. It was just like, nope, full stop, all done. See you next time.
Yep. It's like climax happened, story ends.
Yep.
There was no falling action, no resolution. It was just, all right, quest completed. We're done.
No post credits either.
Yeah, no, it was kind of disappointing actually. Not gonna lie.
I fully expected it. So
I kind of expected Bradley Cooper to appear again.
I kind of want a Bradley Cooper solo film of him as a 2'2" person.
That would be amazing. I would see that every day for the rest of my life.
So yeah, that was good. Yeah. So speaking of Bradley Cooper, let's get into the performances.
Best performance goes to Bradley Cooper for sure.
Yep, for the 2-minute appearance, he was the standout of the film.
Yeah.
So I guess you'd say your lead role would be Chris Pine.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was Edgin. We're gonna go with that. I guess it was okay.
I don't like Chris Pine as an actor to begin with, except for the one performance he did in Don't Worry, Darling. I thought that was really well put together on his part. But I don't really like Chris Pine.
I didn't like him in Wonder Woman, and I liked him in the first Star Trek, and I didn't like him in the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't like his technique. I don't like the way he approaches things. Just it is what it is,
I like his hair. That's about it. So
moving on, Michelle Rodriguez.
I was gonna say moving on the hair. Michelle Rodriguez played Holga. Also plays Letty in Fast and Furious.
Facts. Shout out to Fast and Furious.
The Fast and Furious 10, where they're going to go to, like, Mars with Elon Musk. So, she was not a good fit. Just say that.
So, I understand, like, the tough persona, and, like, Michelle Rodriguez could sell that. But she didn't sell it here.
No.
She was very miscast or misplaced. And I don't know if it... I don't know which one it is. I don't know if it's misplaced or miscast.
I think she did the best with what she could, but
right.
I don't want to say her best. She didn't fit the role. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
Because she's a good actress. I've seen it in Fast and Furious. And there was another movie she was in that I'm drawing a blank on. But regardless, like the first Fast and Furious and like 4, she was good.
Yeah, for sure. And then we have Justice Smith, who was in Detective Pikachu. Playing a half-elf wild magic sorcerer here.
Oh, that was who that was. Yeah, that's Simon. Okay, I got you. Yeah, he was cool.
He was cool.
He was probably the best character out of the group, maybe. I mean, either him or the other person we'll talk about next. But yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty...
I like his character arc, his story that he had where he was in fighting in his mind his grandfather was a really cool concept.
Yeah, he just kind of lacked confidence, and once he got the confidence in himself, that was it. That's a story arc right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the most complete. That was honestly the most complete arc in the film. Like, even with the main arc.
Right.
That was the most complete.
And it's a supporting role, too, and Justice Smith kind of nails every scene he's in.
Yeah, I'd almost say, like, I don't want to say he takes the lead away, but he shines. He outshines Chris Pine on numerous occasions.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So then you have Sophia Lillis. We're going to go with that?
Mm-hmm.
She played Doric. She was the elven archer lady thief thing.
Yes.
She was good.
Yeah.
She didn't really have an arc. She was just like Simon's love interest, kind of.
Kind of,
and
yeah.
like
That was that.
Like, they picked her up, and it was really like, I will say it did give a really funny video game vibe where you show up to, like, there's a companion there, and you're like, I'm gonna go hunt this person down. You're like, I don't know you. You're like, yeah, but I'm gonna go hunt them down. And they go, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
So
kind of reminded me a lot of like the starts to Monster Hunter games.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll see that.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, her performance was good.
Yeah. Like we've been saying, there was just not a whole lot of story, not a whole lot of screenplay here, so the actors did the best they could.
Yeah, again, Justice Smith did the best.
Yeah.
With what he had.
Yeah.
But then you have...
We gotta talk about Hugh Grant here.
Yeah, Hugh Grant was...
I don't understand Hugh Grant's casting this movie.
I don't really understand his character. I don't. He played Forge. I didn't know that was his name. I thought his name was like Daniel or something, so that works.
Forge? I thought his name was Daniel. That's
I don't know.
amazing.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, Hugh Grant, not great in this movie. Hugh Grant, great in other movies.
Yeah, Hugh Grant here just... I understand the point of his character was to be like kind of sleazy.
Yeah.
And just kind of like give you unsettling, uncomfortable vibes. He does that beautifully, but man, it just is awkward.
It was weird.
It's awkward as hell, man.
And again, he fell victim to the Chris Pine weird jokes at weird times.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Like, every single line in this movie felt like it had to be a joke. And I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't want it. I'm kind of really done talking about this movie, to be honest with you, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, then you got to talk about... Oh, man, this guy got a tilde. Jean Page. Sorry, dude, I can't say your first name.
Roger Jean Page.
All right. Then we got to talk about Roger Jean Page. He played Zenk. Didn't know that was his name. Called him Paladin the whole movie. He was okay.
Yeah.
Him and Justice Smith were great in the scenes they were together with.
But even Page got annoying a little bit.
Little bit. He was too... I don't know.
Like, his role was too static, because he would always like take things like literally.
I like the scene where he walked over to Rock.
Yeah.
That was about it. I got a chuckle out of me, and then we moved on with life.
Pretty much. Like, that's the thing. Everything in this movie felt very generic and static, and just, there wasn't a whole lot of experimentation. Again, once we just got to the actual quest, it was just like, man, could anything interesting happen on screen? Could the answer to that question? No,
could
not
this
at all.
be any more generic?
Yeah.
So, the last person we'll talk about is Chloe Coleman. She played Kira, who was Edgin's daughter.
Correct.
And she was there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't like this movie. I'm kind of done with it. She was pretty good, I guess, in her role.
Yeah.
I
liked her better in 65, but I still didn't like that movie.
Yeah.
I think I like this movie more than I like 65, and that's saying something. So don't go see 65 either.
Wow, rest in peace 65 fans. So I'm done. Let's just rate this movie and stop.
Yeah, all right.
I gave this Outhouse a 3 out of 10. Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah, it's a solid 5 out of 10 for me, because again, like the first half was amazing, felt like a D&D game. Second half of the movie, just solid no. That could just stay at a room floor. So, anyways, folks, let us know what you think about Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, or don't. You can let us know at allstarsentertainment18@gmail.com. That's allstarsentertainment18@gmail.com. Again, you've been listening to the All Stars Entertainment Podcast. As always, I'm Colin.
I'm Brian. I did not like this movie.
And we'll see you on the next one.